everybody. Welcome to this episode of Elements to Elevate by 180 Elevate. Each month, we laser focus and dig deeper into an area of leadership, which we truly believe is an element to uplift our perspectives and humanity. From insights to action, the path to elevate your mind, body, and soul starts here. In today's episode, we have Carol Robin. Before co-founding Leaders in Tech in the Silicon Valley, Carol taught Interpersonal Dynamics course, more popularly known as the Touchy-Feely course at the Stanford School of Business. Leaders in Tech is where she brings the process of touchy-feely to executives in a wide range of business on leadership development, strategic visioning, and executive team building. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on our show.
I'm delighted to be here and honored. Thank you.
Thank you. I personally really admire your work because we share similar visions to truly bring authenticity and vulnerability to strengthen the leaders today. Would love to hear about your learnings and takeaways on your journey.
I'm eager to share. Thank you for the opportunity. Any place in particular you'd like me to start?
Stage is yours.
Okay. So let me start with a little bit about how I ended up where I am. Because I am not a career academic, even though I spent almost 2 decades at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. I've had 6 different careers. My first career was in sales and marketing in industrial automation. In fact, in 1975, I went to work for the largest industrial automation company in the world as the first woman hired into a non-clerical job.
Wow.
So the dinosaurs weren't still roaming the earth, but I have been around for a while. And the first thing that I learned there was that if I was going to succeed, I had to understand that the rules of the game had been set by men at that point, maybe still so, and that those rules included leaving your feelings in the parking lot before you walked into the office. And that served me very well. And I was hardworking. I was a reasonably fast learner. And 10 years later, I found myself running a 13 Western state region, $50 million. At that time, it was considered a lot of money. And I was at an offsite with my team, and I got a little excited about what I thought we could do together. And I got met with just kind of crickets. And then I got more excited. Come on, you guys, imagine. They were all still guys. I finally fixed that, but at this point, I still hadn't. Come on, you guys, think about how cool this could be. Nothing. And then finally, I'm like, what's going on? And one of my guys leans in and says, Carol, is that water in the corner of your eye? Oh my God, are you going to cry? And then he says, are you human after all?
Oh.
Then I burst out crying. And I said, you don't think I'm effing human? I did use the full expletive because
of course, it's emotions.
And I tore up our agenda and I said, I don't think there's anything more important for us to talk about than that for the next 2 days. Beautiful. And that's what we did. And we talked about who we were, why we were there, what we wanted from each other. And that, I believe, was the day we became a team. And I also believe that's the day I became a leader. And if you fast forward, it's somewhat ironic that eventually, when I got to Stanford, I ended up becoming known as the queen of touchy-feely, not because I was the best teacher, or I had other colleagues that were enormously talented and excellent teachers, but because by then I had really learned to live it. I had learned to live the importance of being vulnerable and expressing feelings and being a whole person at work, instead of leaving half of myself in the parking lot. So that's where it all started.
That's beautiful. So it was like the breakthrough that you had at that retreat.
Yeah, it's a watershed.
Yeah, truly personal transformation. It's when you honor who you are first, and then you grow, and then that's when you can truly be you bring your whole self into any form of leadership that you are trying to implement.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the reasons I so admire what you're doing is that is part of elevating, and in
Hmm.
fact, changing your perspective 180 degrees. Uh, and one of the things I learned that was so important and that I've tried to teach and coach on is that our mental models, our beliefs and assumptions about what's effective are set very early in our careers. It's true that if I burst out crying 2 months into my job, I may never have reached the level I did. On the
Hmm.
other hand, I never tested whether or not that was still serving me until front and center it was really clear that it had stopped serving me, and who knows how long ago it had stopped serving me. So I think it's really important for leaders to constantly re-examine or examine in the first place their mental models, their beliefs and assumptions that are driving their choices, that are driving their behaviors. And that's how we grow and develop as leaders too.
So, speaking of that, what's the one thing about leadership that you truly, truly believe in that the others tend to overlook?
Good leader, and this is not just because I was a teacher, good leaders are good learners. And the best learners make the best leaders. Every interaction with another human being is an opportunity for learning. And I don't think most leaders ever stop to actually think about that. And one of the reasons this course at Stanford became so famous
Mm-hmm.
and is still legendary is that um, people do business with people. They don't do business with ideas or machines or plans or money. They actually do business with people. So until you
Mm-hmm.
get the people part right, good luck. Then, as a side benefit, these students learn that all these competencies and skills that they acquire in the course translate into them being much more interpersonally effective with their families, with their in their marriage, with their friends. I get as many emails 10, 15, 20 years later from former students saying, I just became a CEO. I owe it all to what I learned from you. As I do, pretty sure your course just saved my marriage.
Beautiful.
Because it all comes down to, do you know how to connect? Do you know how to be curious, which you can't do if you're not a learner? Do you know how to allow yourself to be known in service of the relationship? Uh, do you know how to suspend judgment long enough to
Mm-hmm.
understand what's happening for someone else, which is part of empathy? Do you have the vocabulary of feelings? Do you know that the vocabulary of feelings is actually a part of the syllabus of the course syllabus? We have to develop a vocabulary of feelings because that's how rare it is for people in business to think in terms of feelings. And it's also an appendix in the book that we ended up writing because you know we're back to leaving half of yourself at the door.
True. Like you said, the early stages of your career, you had to pretty much masculinize. So it's kind of like
Exactly.
you shut off all the doors. And
Exactly.
for, for me, that breakthrough moment was Brené Brown, of course. She's the queen of
Oh yeah.
vulnerability.
Yeah, I've
And
always thought I should be getting some royalties because I can't tell you how many people I've recommended her book to.
me too. I think join me in that club if you do get the
Yeah,
thing to it. But I was listening to her and I was like, wow, the power that you can break through by being vulnerable, it's way beyond what you can by putting walls around you and piercing
absolutely.
that core of your people or your team and
Yeah,
empowering them to be the better version of themselves is what a true leader is all about.
yeah. In fact, it's a source of power, to your point. There are lots of sources of power for leaders, of course, but one source of power is what we call referent power, which is the kind of power you have when you're a role model, when other
Mm-hmm.
people want to be more like you. And
Mm-hmm.
to the extent that you show up as a person who is interested in connecting and is willing to be vulnerable and authentic, um, you're more likely to have referent power. And in fact, well, yeah, vulnerability leads when you're the first person to be vulnerable. Often, it's reciprocated. often
Yes.
the other person will feel a little freer to also be vulnerable. And that's how relationships deepen and grow and become more robust. Now, having said that, I'm not advocating bleh, tell
Yeah.
everybody. There's, in fact, what we used to teach and we talk about in our book is something called the 15% rule, which is you have to step outside your comfort zone. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
grow and learn, you're going to have to step outside your comfort zone. So nobody's saying that it's going to be comfortable to be vulnerable. But there's three zones, operating zones. The one in the middle is your comfort zone. You never think twice about what you say. The one on the outside is your danger zone. In a million years, you'd never share that. And the
Mm-hmm.
one in the middle is called your learning zone. That's why they
Mm-hmm.
don't start you out on a double black diamond slope when you learn to ski, but they also don't leave you on the bunny slope.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to learn and grow interpersonally, you have to take some risks and step into the learning zone with regard to vulnerability and feedback, by the way, also, which is another element. And so what happens is uh, my students say, but Carol, the minute I'm outside my comfort zone, how do I know I'm not in my danger zone? How do I know I'm still in my learning zone?
Mm-hmm.
So, say try stepping a little bit outside your comfort zone, 15%. You'll be surprised. It's not going to be catastrophic. If you've only stepped 15% outside your comfort zone, you're not going to freak the other person out. You're unlikely to freak yourself out. And if things go well and they reciprocate, then you got a new, slightly larger comfort zone with that
Mm-hmm.
person. Then you can step 15% beyond that. And that's how our relationships learn, grow, and deepen.
Very true. And being more and more with like minded people, because I know you're big about community as well, makes
Yes.
that a little bit easier because then they
Yes.
both come and they meet in the middle. And that's why the three pillars that we've identified in our organization is connect, grow, and give. And then you go
Yeah.
back to connect, grow, give because it's a cycle
Exactly.
and it's like,
Exactly. And iterative. It
yes,
deepens as you go through the cycle. That's exactly right.
because once you connect, you grow, you give, and then you're able to grow more because then you're okay. This worked, like I said, the 15%. I like that. I'm going to use it in my own training and stuff as well.
Yeah.
And so you're known as the master of integrating IQ and EQ. I love how they said that. And we're about conscious integration of mind, body, and soul. So, what
Yeah.
does that mean to you in aspects of leadership?
Well, it's related to what we've just been talking about. I think that um, the more we show up as full human beings, the more others will. I'm getting a screen, something on my screen, which I hope you're not seeing or you can get rid of. Um,
Ours is good.
okay. Um, so I'm a big believer that the more we normalize uh, this integration that you're talking about, the better served we are in all our relationships,
Mm-hmm.
is especially, I mean, in our business relationships as well as our personal relationships. And sometimes, if we go back to, so it's called touchy feely because of the emphasis on feelings, not necessarily the touchy part.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but let's think for a moment about how it's stunning to me how socialized so many of my students have been so that they can't even access their feelings. When you ask them, how are you feeling? They're like, one reason that we have to develop the vocabulary. It's like, well, take a look at the list. See anything you're feeling. But the other is that often one way to access that is through our body.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm feeling, but I do know I'm feeling a little flutter in my stomach. And then that gives us a little clue that maybe it's time to stop and think a little bit and actually feel
Mm-hmm.
and try to identify what's going on. And the more agile I get, the easier it is for me to identify and express what I'm feeling to you, the more you know me. And the more you know me, the more likely it is you're going to be willing to be known by me. And that's how we build stronger relationships and closer connections.
Very, very well said again. And it is, I mean, when you say the standard answer is how you're feeling, I'm doing great. And that's when I
Exactly.
learned in my training, like, go take a step back and try saying something else. You'll see the other person's response and then kind of take the baby steps towards it.
Totally. You know, in our Leaders in Tech program, one of the ways we start all our programs is with a prompt that's basically each person takes 90 seconds to say, if you really knew me right now, you would know. And you have to include three feeling words in your check-in. So instead of the standard check-in, if you really knew me, if you really knew me right now, you would know that I am really excited to be on the show right now and in support of what you're trying to create in the world. If you really knew me, you'd know that I think we're kindred spirits, that I think what we're trying to do in the world could really be game changing. And if you
Mm-hmm.
really knew me, you know that I'm deeply frustrated sometimes by how hard it is to try to get others to understand how critical and valuable this is because there's so much more chatter and attention paid to the divisiveness than the work that's possible if that the connection that's possible if we just work a little bit and shift our perspective.
That's
So that took maybe a minute, and now
I,
you have me,
it's a very
and now you have,
powerful exercise because it, I think, opens the doorway to a conversation which can be truly meaningful. So, love
exactly.
that. Love that.
The way
So,
it's followed by each person saying, "When I heard you say," and then they have to say, "When I heard you say that, Carol, I felt," and then they have to actually find a feeling word: supportive, empathetic, sad, disappointed, happy.
so
Talk
then
about
another
dropping into a different level.
so then another quality of a good leader would be to listen then.
Oh,
Does
absolutely.
so if,
Absolutely. In fact, I will add that a
uh-huh.
good leader, the job of a leader is to ensure the best answer is found, not necessarily provide the best answer. And a trap that a lot of leaders fall into is, oh, I got to have an answer. Nope. You just got to both ask the best questions and make sure you're getting the best answers in your organization. And if you think you've got to provide all the answers, you've got the wrong people working for you. I mean, if you have to provide all the right answers, you're also not developing anybody. So how is that leadership?
So you're essentially bringing out the best in your team,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
then you make those decisions moving onwards together from there.
Exactly.
So if you were to define leadership in the dictionary, if they tell you, okay, come on, let's write a new definition for the new generation, what is it in your own words?
So leadership, first of all, leadership is not a role function. It has nothing to do with where you are in the organization. It's a set of behaviors that compel others to do their best on behalf of the cause or the organization.
So to make the mission larger than your own self.
Yeah. And by the way, to mobilize it, it's great to be, when I say compel, I mean compel to action.
Well, that's amazing. So that's all we have for today. But thank you so much. That was great. Lots to think about. A lot of good tips, and we're going to try to
Thank you.
apply each one of them. Thank you.
Please go out there and learn how to connect on in service of a better world.
Absolutely. That's the goal. That's the mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi there. I'm Carol Robin, and I'm delighted to once again be a part of 180 Elevate's mission to help people learn how to connect and grow. In this short masterclass, I'll be talking about a crucial element of connection, and that is to deepen a relationship and truly connect. We need to learn how to create conditions in which someone else is more likely to allow themselves to be known. Relationships exist on a continuum. At one end of the continuum, there is dysfunction or just contact and no connection. At the other end of the continuum is something we might call exceptional.
Now, nobody is advocating that you have to turn all of your relationships into something exceptional. But along the way, it turns out that you reach something we might call robust and functional. And it does behoove us all to learn how to move along the continuum towards that. The characteristics of exceptional relationships are that you are both more fully known to each other, that your disclosures won't be used against you, that you can both be honest and with each other and resolve your conflicts productively, and that you're both invested in each other's growth. Now, a critical element to moving along that continuum on the first three of those characteristics is disclosure on the part of both parties. Now, note that disclosure tends to be reciprocal. So if you want someone else to be more open with you, which requires some risk-taking and some vulnerability on their part, you might have to be willing to go first. And that's especially important when there are power differentials due to differences in where you are on a hierarchy in an organization, and sometimes even due to social status and the power that comes with different social status. So to ask someone in a lower power position to make themselves vulnerable and take a risk in allowing themselves to be known before you've done that with them isn't very fair. In addition to that, and if we're going to invite someone to allow themselves to be more known by us, we have to understand the very important role that inquiry and curiosity play, as well as empathetic listening and some self-awareness. So let's spend a few minutes expanding on those. For somebody to tell you more about themselves, they have to believe you're genuinely interested in them. The root of the word inquiry means quest, which means to search when you're not sure what you're actually going to find. Inquiry and curiosity, in turn, require suspending judgment. If you think you already know what's going on for someone else or how they feel or what's behind their actions, and you're just looking to prove a hypothesis correct, they will both sense that, and they will not be necessarily very open to becoming better known by you. Genuine curiosity is likely to encourage disclosure, but it does require that you at least suspend judgment for a little bit. Now, advice is the opposite of inquiry. It implies that you already know the answer and what is best for the other person, which is actually unlikely to make them feel invited to share more. And it's a trap we fall into because we think that's how we're being of most value. And yet, we're likely to be coming at it from our perspective rather than theirs. We want to be helpful, and sometimes we need to allow for the possibility that it might be even more helpful to ask more questions and just be a thought partner than to provide advice. As Marcel Proust once said, the real act of discovery consists not in finding new lands, but in seeing with new eyes. Now, inquiry is not just about asking questions. Instead, it's about questions that are likely to lead to discovery, as I just mentioned. Close-ended questions are limiting. They can be answered with a yes or a no. They tend to narrow the conversation, and they can be experienced as intrusive or judgmental. For example, don't you think you're just overreacting? Or didn't you already try that twice? Likewise, questions that start with why carry an implicit request for justification. For example, why did you do that? Why do you think that? When inviting someone else to be more known, it's good to stay away from the why questions. What's upsetting might be a better question than why are you so upset? Part of creating conditions that might lead to you knowing someone better is to maybe not always drive a person up into their head, which is what a why question does, but help them stay with the feelings and what's in their heart, which is why, what, where, when, how tend to be better. Open-ended questions start with those words, and they widen the scope of the conversation. For example, when was the last time you felt that way? How did you come to see it that way? What's going on for you? The most productive questions are open-ended, whether they're convergent meaning you've talked about 3 issues so far that are troubling you. Is there one in particular you'd like to talk about more? Or divergent, meaning, are there other considerations that you might be wanting to talk about as well as the ones you've already talked about? Now, equally important to engaging in true inquiry is engaging in real listening. Again, if you're not interested in the answer, you're better off not asking at all. Now, for real listening to occur, both the speaker and the receiver must be active. So, as a listener, it behooves you to listen for underlying meaning and feelings. And at times, as a listener, you can actually help the speaker get clearer about what's actually going on for them. Patience in giving the other person some time and space to really drop into their feelings and think a little bit more about what's going on for them is likely to yield better results and give them a sense that you really are interested. And last, when we learn to listen, we actually help both of us peel the layers of the onion back, so to speak, to what's actually going on. Here's an example. Many years ago, I was recently married. I saw my husband struggling in the kitchen. I walked in and I said, "Can I help you with that?" And he said, "Don't tell me what to do." Now, I could have gotten activated, but instead I got curious. I said, "Wow, what did you hear me say?" And he said, "I heard you say I'm incompetent and I don't know what I'm doing." It doesn't matter that what I had said was, "Can I help you with that?" What he had heard was, "You don't know what you're doing." And that helped me get even more curious. Wow, what's that about? Rather than argue with him about what I'd actually said. Wow, what's that about? Oh, I had an older brother, and I was little, and I was eight years younger, and he used to lord it over me because there were a lot of things I didn't know. And frankly, I always feel small and less than when somebody offers to help me and I feel incompetent. Well, what a great thing for me to learn. That is why earlier I noted that some self-awareness helps us be better listeners. And the concept of the 2 antennae is that we're all equipped with 2 antennae, one which picks up what's going on for the other person, the signals, and the other one that picks up what's going on for us. And the more activated we feel, or the more misunderstood we feel, the more it behooves us to get curious. Here's something you might want to do with what you just learned. Think of someone you'd like to know better. What are 3 actions you could take that might make it easier for them to allow themselves to be better known by you, based on what you just heard, that you might want to experiment with? To learn more about my work and me, check out my recently published book, Connect, Building Exceptional Relationships with Family, Friends, and Colleagues, based on a legendary course my co-author and I taught at the Graduate School of Business, which was the most popular elective there. Or go to our book website, connectandrelate.com, where you'll find free downloadable assessments and activities. You can also find out more about the programs offered through the nonprofit that I co-founded, Leaders in Tech, at leadersintech.org. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining us today and elevating yourself. Charity should begin at home, but should not stay there. At 180 Elevate, it is our honor to support local and global philanthropies which make an impact on the lives of our beautiful children and the world in of itself.
What would this world look like if we all felt cared for? Let's co-create that new paradigm. If you would like to consider joining our philanthropic mission, please consider donating at 180elevate.com. And next is just a glimpse into one of the many philanthropies our organization supports.
The Caleb and Calder Sloan's Awesome Foundation is a nonprofit charity focused on helping disadvantaged children, empowering kids to pay it forward themselves.
I'm glad that everybody is doing this. My brother Calder, he was the light in my heart.
We'll live a million lives, but our hearts still beat like one.
I love you. I'm gonna give you the kids out of there.
For 7 short but beautiful years, Calder Jacob Sloan taught all those around him about love and joy.
Young Calder died just 7 days after his 7th birthday, electrocuted while swimming.
Mr. Awesome, they called him Calder Jacob Sloan.
You lose a child after 7 years. It's so short and unfair that you want to create a legacy.
And although tragedy took his young life,
this little boy, I tell you, he packed a lot of life into his short 7 years.
His mission to change the world has only begun.
Calder was a unique kid, and we called him Mr. Awesome because the lesson I think that he taught all of us when he was alive was that he really was about kindness.
A Florida boy nicknamed Mr. Awesome has become the focus of a global campaign to share his smile and uplifting spirit, going viral in the form of his colorful self-portrait.
His soaring spirit continues to help others.
Captain Calder, Mr. Awesome Sloan are on the side of this 727.
I really miss him, and I think this brings out the happiness for him.
It started by saving lives, changing pool regulations.
Miami-Dade and Broward passed ordinances to make new pools safer.
And in just a few years, the foundation has built an awesome track record of social cause events, educational programs, exhibitions, and installations all over America, including an annual Give Back Day in South Florida.
We're doing a Give Back Day. This is our 3rd time doing this by helping other schools.
Every year, his family, friends, and some volunteers get together and give back to the community in his honor.
The foundation was quick to assist in responding to the historic disaster in Puerto Rico by collecting and delivering disaster relief supplies with Operation Puerto Rico Care Lift. And when the holidays came, the children of Puerto Rico were not forgotten.
Children in Puerto Rico, a passion to help them, led to Operation Puerto Rico Gift Lift, a hurricane relief toy drive that has already filled up multiple airplanes.
And Sunday in Aguadilla, a giant party for anyone who needed it. And wouldn't you know, the whole town came out.
And we've teamed up with Promax DBA to create the annual House of Awesome event for 3 years, packing thousands of backpacks in NYC and LA for underprivileged kids, teaming up with #Lunchbag to provide for the homeless, and even brought the House of Awesome to corporate events like Tegna Broadcasting. During the COVID-19 Has Met Its Match campaign, it matched individual donations, raising $120,000 from over 250 donors, hospitals, and first responder organizations on the front lines fighting COVID-19 across America. We have the need to feed. Our awesome grocery giveaways are tackling the food insecurity crisis head on, distributing thousands of groceries with 10 events and counting all over South Florida.
Key West hosted a drive-through for their residents.
Miami Children's Museum partnering with Caleb and Calder Sloan's Awesome Foundation
to lend a helping hand.
We're in Miami Beach helping to feed 500 families today.
We have orange juice, USDA chicken, and all these beautiful fresh cut flowers. I'm very happy to give the food.
Thank you for the food. Appreciate you coming.
We're live in Tamarack. A long line because of a big need. In New Orleans,
providing food for 900 families.
And Connecticut.
The Connecticut Food Bank worked with the Caleb and Calder Sloan Awesome Foundation, and they expect to distribute food to 1,500 households.
And this year, House of Awesome came home to Miami as the foundation packed thousands of backpacks for inner city school kids, grades K through 12, for the amazing Overtown Youth Center.
We have a celebration going on.
We kick it off today with these incredible backpacks of supplies.
I'm graduating! You know, it's just nice to start the school year off fresh.
Yeah, that looked like a party out there.
We graduated! I graduated! Awesome!
The best is yet to come.
And the foundation partnered with Miami Heat superstar Alonzo Mourning and the Overtown Youth Center in sponsoring the 33 Awesome Thanksgiving giveaway, providing meals for 300 families.
Thank you, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving to you.
By working with our partners and our supporters who open their hearts, hands, and checkbooks, we've been making a difference in the lives of children and their families. With adventure, laughter, and kindness. And we've only just begun. The Caleb and Calder Sloan's Awesome Foundation.
Unleash your awesome.